to Mutton Chop Monday, May 6, 2024. Happy Mother's Day this weekend to all the mothers out there. Joining me this week is a mountain of a man, Steve Vickers, retired Sergeant First Class, the United States Army. I found it to be a pretty good episode. There's a lot of funny stuff, a lot of great stories, and there's some sensitive topics. So, viewer discretion advised. Steve also has a podcast, Whiskey, Will, and Wounds. Check him out wherever you download your podcast. Also, he has a YouTube channel starting this coming week. Links will be below. Last bit of housekeeping we're going to do is that I'm thinking about starting a little merch here for the Chop House. Hit us in the comments if that's something you think you'd like. And without further ado, Sergeant First Class retired, Steve Vickers. All right, welcome to Mutton Chop Monday. Sitting with me is a man tougher than a Waffle House steak, Steve Big Vickers. How you doing, Vic?
I'm doing well, Show. How are you, buddy?
Oh, just trying to beat the heat, man. How's things up there in Ohio?
Oh, they're good. They're good. We're getting in the riding season, so we're happy up here. The winter blues are over.
I know you love your still ponies.
Yeah, most certainly.
So why don't we just start off with, like I have everybody else, tell us a little bit about where you're from. Well, I got you joined the military, and we'll go from there, man.
All right, yeah. So I'm from a small town in eastern Ohio. If you're ever on Jeopardy, it's the first settlement in Ohio, a place called Martin's Ferry. Very, very small town. It was a steel mill town. The steel mill was right next to the football field, so you had a choice in life. You know what I mean? You're going to have to be good in football, or you go work in the steel mill. So had a very tough. My dad was hardened woodpecker lips. You know what I mean? He worked 30 years in a steel mill, and so he was very stern. I get a lot of that from him, and we were lower middle class, but I didn't want for nothing. You know what I mean? Me and my sister, we didn't want for nothing. So, looking back on my childhood, I needed a stern man in my life. I needed, and that progressed into coaches, and then, so when I got to Fort Leonard Wood for, basic training, it wasn't a culture shock to me because I had people screaming at me my whole friggin' life. So
I felt like a day off, huh?
Right. It was not, I wasn't out of my element by any means.
All right. When you went for Linwood Basic AIT, you were an engineer, like I.
Yeah.
What was your first duty station?
Well, I was an engineer, but I started out a 12 Foxtrot, not a 12 Bravo.
Oh, okay.
So I was a 12 Foxtrot was combat engineer vehicle crewman. So that was the ACE, the AVLB, and the CEV, and that's what I initially started off as. And then when I left basic and AIT, I went to Korea. Korea was my first duty station, and you had a couple of other guys on here. Germany was in there. The funny story was about a week or two before I was getting out of AIT, I had orders for Germany. And then when you went to PAC and they're like, all right, you have orders for Germany. Are you married? I'm like, no. They said, okay, you're going to Germany for 2 years. And I'm like, well, what if I was married? They're like, well, you'll go for 3. So I said, okay. And then, so after that conversation, I called my girlfriend, on the phone, and I'm like, hey, you want to go to Germany? And she's like, sure. I'm like, well, we have to get married. And she's like, are you proposing to me? I'm like, yeah. And, And she's like, sure. And then a week later, came back. I was going to Korea, and that's a hardship tour. You know, you don't take your spouse over there, especially as a private in the Army up in, the 2ID land. So they're like, hey, you're going to Korea now. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, he's like, it's just a 1 year tour. I'm like, now if I'm married, is it 2 years? They're like, no, it's just 1 year, and you don't take your spouse. So I told my wife, and then I unproposed. I'm like, hey, I'm going to Korea. We'll get married in a year when I get back. And but we did get married before I went to Korea. And I got married on the 16th of September. I was on a plane to Korea on the 22nd of September. So my first year of marriage was blissful, being separated.
I got a story kind of like that myself. Well, at least you got to claim some BAH then, though, didn't you?
Yeah. And well, funny enough, first, I don't know, 90 days in Korea, I didn't get paid. And so, no pay due. And, once they figured it out, that in 93, when I was in Korea, it was still, you went to the cashier, down in finance, they still had a cashier's office, and they handed you a check. It was before all the direct deposit stuff. And so, yeah, I leave finance. I go strictly to the PX. I buy myself a TV and a VCR and a stereo to put in my room, But yeah.
I know that one. I know that one. Let's see. You and I know each other. We were stationed in Kelly Hill, Fort Benning, 3rd ID.
Yep.
All right. When did you get to Fort Benning?
Well, the first time, I'm a several timer on Kelly Hill. The first time I was there, I came to Fort Benning. Let me see. I came to Fort Benning in '96. I was on the All Army Wrestling team, and they were over on Sand Hill, and so I spent 2 years over on Sand Hill with the All Army Wrestling team, and I got hurt, and they ended up moving to Fort Carson, and so they were taking team members up to Carson with them, and they're like, hey, if you want to be a member of the team next year, heal up and then come back and try out again. And then I just, I started a family, moving, it just wasn't in the cards, but yeah, so I was on Fort Benning I was up on Kelly Hill from end of 97 to 99. And then I came back in 2003.
That's when I got there was 2003, as everybody was gone when I got there, and I was there for just a couple of days. And Sarndoza was like, "You're getting on a plane." No.
So you are a late deployer as well.
Yeah, correct. I was the last, actually, in the last group of people that last deployed, because I was in I forget where we were at there in the middle of the desert.
Right.
But I was out there for no more than 6 days before we were moved to the border to get ready to invade.
Oh, shit.
Go up there. Yeah. Like,
I was a late deployer as well. And previous Sergeant Major Slaughter was a first sergeant when I was in the battalion previous.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got to Fort Benning in February of 2003. So I was a late deployer as well. And I knew Dozier from my time before. Me and him was in the same company together in the 317th in '99. And but yeah, I was a late deployer, and I had stabilization because I just came from Korea again. So I was in Korea in 2002, and so I came to Fort Benning, and knowing that battalion was already, brigade was already gone, and the problem is they had they were stop lost. So the whole brigade was stop lost, and they were in Kuwait, in 02, and then they came home for Christmas or whatever, and then they got sent back over there. So there was in some of the squads there were E6 team leaders. You know what I mean? And I came from Korea as an E6, and my last job was platoon sergeant. And so when I got the battalion, they were like, "Hey, you might as well just stay in the rear. We don't have a job for you." And it took a call. Sergeant Major Slaughter called back to staff duty, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm here," and he's like, "Well, I'll just stay there. Like, I got plenty of E6s," and I'm like, "Hey, listen, Sergeant Major, like, I've been in the Army 10 years. You need to put me in the fight, brother." And so he's like, "Come over," and so I waived my stabilization and went in 03. But yeah,
Fun times, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it was that by then it was my third time in Kuwait, so that was familiar. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yes, it was. There was still some remnants, of some guys I knew that were still at Fort Benning. So that was what company were you in then?
I ended up in HHC in the ABE section pulling security for some topo guys. Basically, is what I was doing. Me and you remember Sergeant Bill, big dude, old guy, he's in his 50s, E7.
No,
but they sent him over there. They sent him over there, and they had me driving him around, and we had a soft skin Humvee getting lit up pretty good, and he had lupus, and he shouldn't have been there. And that's another story for another time. But
right,
yeah, they stuck me with the first sergeant of Charlie Company. What was his name? He was the S3 NCO.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
Hispanic dude, right?
No, it was
Charlie Company.
No, he ended up being Charlie Company. No, Sequels was an Alpha Company, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But anyway, it doesn't matter. I got stuck over there, and I didn't know anybody except for one cat that I went to basic training with, who everybody told me to stay away from. So the only guy I knew they told me to stay away from. I ended up, riding with Josh Carter, and we were all kind of, but like we got taken away from all them, and we just rode with these topographical engineers, and Captain Stanley, if you remember him, was with us, and basically we were security for them. And it kind of sucked because I'd be like hauling these maps they're printing out back and forth to the front. Soft skin Humvee just get lit up. But that's another story for another day. But you were an Alpha Company, correct?
In 03, I was in HAC.
Oh, HAC, okay.
And they put me in S4.
Wow.
Right. Fun times. Super, super fun times. And then, and then I moved. Then I moved to Alpha Company. But yeah, I was in Alpha Company.
Yeah, that was a weird year when we got back because they were talking forever and ever. Oh, we're going to change over everything. Battalion's going to be no more. I was in HHC, which is, I don't recommend anybody. I was a brand new E5, and I don't recommend anybody as a brand new E5 from a line job to go into HHC at all because it made me a piece of shit, to be quite honest with you. It made enemies out of a lot of people because the new sergeant major we got told me to tell a lot of people ward off. And then when he became first sergeant,
right,
there we go.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was weird, and that dynamic, that dynamic of just having doing away with an engineer battalion, affected a lot of people's careers because you have 4 companies. There's 4 E8s, and then you have an E8 up at battalions. So you know what I mean. So when you're doing away with companies like that, you're doing away with positions. You know what I mean. And then it made getting promoted that much tougher. Setting yourself apart from your peers that much more difficult.
Oh yeah, I get that completely. Well, case in point, when we went to Iraq in 05, 2 platoon sergeants were E6s, you and Sergeant Pat, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and
it made it hard to get what you should be getting being a platoon sergeant, but we don't technically have the slots to give it to you. Is basically what they were saying.
Right. Yeah. But in 05 was, I would tell you, 05 was probably my funnest, right? Funnest time in the Army. The power, the responsibility, that an E6 held in 2005 is unparalleled. You know what I mean? It was a squad war then. You know what I mean? And
exactly.
I was a platoon sergeant, but it was a squad. It was 4 Humvees. It was 12 dudes leaving the JCC or the CMOC. It was 12 dudes. You know what I mean?
Right.
In Humvees, right? So
running QR, like my crews that I was with and your crew, we switched back and forth every other week doing either QRF or running to go get all the other missions as a convoy security kind of stuff. And it was actually pretty fun, and you got a lot closer to a lot of people in that little camp. I'm glad we weren't on the.
I mean, it's 100 people. 100 people in the upstairs of a police station. You're sleeping on top of 200 Iraqis at any given time. You know what I mean? I mean it. It ain't like it was unlike being on any fob or any cop when you can open up your door and go outside. You know what I mean? In that place, you open up the door, you're in the gym. And then you walk through the gym, you're in the MWR area. And when you walk downstairs to go outside, you're getting in your truck to leave. So
exactly.
I mean, So it was it was the funnest. I went to Iraq 4 times, and that hands down the funnest year. Hands down.
Oh, that one, yeah. I think it was great from a perspective of, we didn't have a lot of like the MWR stuff, and we didn't have a lot of the whatever, but at the same time, it didn't have a lot of the bullshit. Like we ran our missions,
right? Yeah,
and we took care of the dudes, made sure everybody eat, made sure everybody got their meal, get care packages from the house, everybody splits it up. It was great. I thought that part of it was great. And I've been deployed a bunch, and I never really had to be on a big camp other than my last half of being in Kosovo when they put us on bond still. But I prefer the smaller to the big one because, well, they don't mortar it every day. The small one.
Yeah, I mean, you're the farther away from the flagpole you can get, the better life is. That's a fact. I don't care where you are. The further away from the flagpole, the more, the more rope you have, you know what I mean? And in 05, in 05, that was before, we instituted trip tickets like at some point during that deployment, you know what I mean? When Johnson was there, finger fucking the finger. Right, finger fucking the goddamn laptop. But yeah, making all the drop downs and all that gee whiz shit. But yeah, I mean, it was you go into the talk, you write down, these are the people going in what trucks, and this is the weapons they have, and that was it. And where are you going? I'm going to Warhorse. They didn't ask you how you got there. They didn't, you know what I mean? They didn't want to know the route. None of that. And then as soon as we left, the JCC, it was on. You know what I mean? It was a race. It was a race to get to the finish, and hope you didn't get blown up.
That's true. And it was always, the only thing they ever really cared about, as long as you called in and told them what checkpoint you were crossing. That's about all they cared about. Yeah. I thought that deployment, I was stop loss the whole time, but I thought that whole time, and I've been deployed, a bunch of other times, but that was probably, like you're saying, that was probably the best time it was good.
Yeah, it was a good year. Good year. Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on to something else here, because we don't have a format. We just do whatever I ask or whatever you'd like to say.
Right.
Let's first of all, let's tell people what you're up to now.
I'm retired. I am 100% from the VA due to many injuries I sustained while in Iraq. Multiple IEDs and such. So I'm fully retired, but I am a member of the Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association. We have a chapter up here in Ohio. Former commander of that chapter, and we ride. My group of friends I have now, we ride anywhere from 10 to 20,000 miles a year, and that's not beating up Ohio streets. That's we're going to Canada in June, third week of June. We're going up to Canada. Well, we're going to Minnesota by way of Canada down into North Dakota. So doing that. After I retired, I was the state leader, ambassador leader for Mission 22, which is a veteran nonprofit that helps combat the epidemic of veterans unaliving themselves. And so I was the state leader for them for 4 years. And it, at the time, I needed it. And now I do a podcast with an Air Force friend of mine, combat veteran, who is called Whiskey Wills Wounds. And each of those names are metaphors. Whiskey is, the vices that we all veterans use to get through the day. Wills is the leisure that we use, and that's in many forms. It don't have to be motorcycles, jeeps, and kayaks, and whatever that leisure is. To us, it's motorcycles, excuse me, and then wounds. It's self-explanatory. We all have them. Some of them are visible, some of them are not. And how do we navigate our new normal with those in the midst of those three things? So yeah, Whiskey Wills Wounds is our podcast. We started. We're doing a video podcast now. We just did our first episode today. A little teaser, but yeah.
Okay. First episode of this year's version of Whiskey Wills and Wounds comes out. When is that coming out? You did it today. When's it coming out?
We put it on our Facebook page. It was just a preview, and then our first episode will be next Friday. It'll drop next Friday on Spotify and YouTube, and then it'll be in audio version on all the other plethora platforms.
where you download your favorite podcasts.
Right.
No, but I'll put the links below. That's good stuff. I listened to your last year's, and it was pretty. I liked it. I listened to it while I was mowing and stuff or something like that. Just had my headphones on. It was great. I think you guys you dug pretty deep on a lot of stuff. So I thought it was really nice.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this. A lot of our old soldiers, they've reached out to me, and they're hitting me up on Messenger or whatever, and they're like, "Big Vic, do you feel that way? Like, you feel depressed? You feel?" And I'm like, "Yes." They're like, "Wow, it must be. It's okay for me to feel that if you feel that." And I'm like, "Listen, man, I'm just a man. Regardless of what you thought of me, I'm just a man. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But yeah, it's nice to know that them guys think of you a certain way. You know what I mean? And then it's also nice because I am so open. I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? What people think about me. I am who I'm Popeye, man. I am who I am, and I make no apologies about it. And so yeah, it when me and Sean started that podcast, he thought he was alone. He thought he was the only one who thought the way he did. And we got in a truck and we drove to Vermont and to drop a dog off for his wife, who is a traveling nurse. And he's like, "Holy shit." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "That's how I think. That's, that's," and I'm like, "Yeah, man, like we're out here." Like, and so that's kind of where the concept came from. Two friends sitting in a truck, driving 13 hours. We didn't turn the radio up one time, and it was just, talking back and forth. And it was so therapeutic. Outside of the VA, outside of doctors, it was just two buddies. And at that time, I hardly knew him. I hardly knew him. And it was like, "Hey, I'm going to Vermont on Tuesday. You want to come?" And I said yes. And my wife, my current wife, she's like, "Hey, we had something planned on Tuesday." And I'm like, "What's that?" She's like, we're getting married." And I'm like, "Oh, I can't go on Tuesday. How about we go Friday?" And he's like, "Okay." And that's what happened, so.
Yeah, you might have been in trouble. You missed that.
Right. But, she knows I got a brain injury, so it's all good. In my defense, I have a brain injury.
Exactly. So anyway, I'm going to put, like I said, the links below. I look forward to this year's season. I'm glad you guys are branching out some more. And that merch you got on your noggin there. You guys got that online somewhere for sale?
Not for sale yet. We have, matter of fact, I don't know if you remember, which is your Smitty. He was in the 317.
Mm-hmm.
He lives up here in Ohio. He has a apparel company.
Cool.
And so we're gonna get it. We got hats coming from him, so they'll be on the website once we get them. Him and his partner, they're both combat wounded veterans. So
that's pretty cool.
like I told you the other day when we talked, I like supporting veteran-owned companies, and I like.
Yeah, I'm big on that too. Real big on that.
Yeah.
So I might have up to make the Chop House merch.
Well, there you go. Yeah, he's like I said, he's an old 317th guy. He might, everything blends together for me. So he might have been one of the original.
Yeah,
he might have been one on the first time I was there, but he good dude. He's an old wrestler like me, so
You were a heck of a wrestler too, weren't you?
Yeah, I was decent. I was decent. I won some tournaments in Korea. I won some tournaments when I was stationed out at Raleigh. I did pretty well, on the national level. Yeah.
That's better than me. I can't wrestle my ass out of bed. Man, I know when we would do combatives that you would be taking out 2 or 3 people at a time and just be whipping everybody's ass.
Yeah. And I took combatives when I was in Korea initially in 2002 from one of the Gracies. He came over and we got to spend a week during hand-to-hand combat. And so I learned a lot of things before I even went to, when I got to Fort Benning and they sent me down on main post and go to the combative school and ended up being, level 4. Hell, by the end of it, I was 269's senior combatives instructor. So, I competed at the All Army Combatives tournament a couple times, didn't win. But it's one of those things where I thought I could throw my shoes on the mat, if you will, and don't have to train up and don't have to, and it didn't work out well for me. So it was humbling, a humbling experience.
I'm sure it worked out better for you than it would have for me.
It was. Yeah, but I mean, I was blessed with some size, so I was able to use it effectively throughout my career. So,
okay, you got to use what you got. You got to use what you got.
Right. That's right.
So, I want to ask you, like, do you, like I have everybody else, do you frequent the VA?
Yeah, no, all the time. I go several times a week. I have a local one here in my town, and then I go to a bigger one for, more in-depth treatment up in Columbus, which is about 60 miles away. So, yeah.
Yeah, are they treating you pretty good?
Yeah, I have zero horror stories about the VA, none. And I think So that may have to do, I was very proactive when I retired and came home, and I had neck surgery about 3 months before I retired. 3 months, yeah. I left Leonard Wood in February. I had neck surgery in November. So however many months that is, three and some change maybe. So, they when I left Leonard Wood, they wasn't going to give me a rating then because I just had surgery. They fused my neck, and shit like that. So I waited till I healed, and then I went. But I had my medical records tabbed. The tabs corresponded with my sheet. My claim sheet and all that stuff. So, when I went in and I gave my records to old boy, he was like, "Oh man, I wish everybody was like you." And I said, the way I see it, it's me helping you help me. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know what I've done for the last 22 years. I know what I've done, and I know, and that process was really easy. And then I made appointments. I kept appointments. I didn't get all pissed off when they're like, hey, we want to put a Band-Aid on this sunken chest wound over here. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, put a Band-Aid on it. And when it keeps bleeding, I'll come back. And then you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I understood the process of, the least invasive to, I understand that, I understood the process. I didn't get upset, and it helped, it helped. Well, it also helped that I'm fucked up. So, the rating, when, a lot of people ask me, like, how'd you get 100%? I'm like, because I'm 100%.
It's that.
That's first and foremost. I'm 100%. Like, I didn't do anything. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't, it wasn't what I said on the paper or how I wrote it, or, you know what I mean? Neck broke. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I have a cadaver bone in my neck where a disc used to be. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah, I got 100%, and I never had to appeal it. I never had to do anything. They took me. They did like what's called a SPECT scan on my head, and they're like, "Oh, look at that black spot in this brain." Then yeah, he's 100%. But I thought not getting it. Like, I didn't want it because I was did we lock up? Oh, I didn't want it because I was contracting. I had a top secret clearance, and I was making a lot more money. But then it started really getting bad. Like, I would go into this top secret office drunk off I'm talking drunk as shit. Top secret office, like popping beer and putting it in like one of these coffee mugs and taking it in the office. And just so my head would quit hurting. So
right,
I got it, and everything's fine now. Like, physically, I can do stuff, but I can't. Like, that's why I'm taking like notes with you and everything else, so I can keep your at it, because I can't remember shit.
Yeah, and that's how, when I was in the military, my platoon sergeant time and all that. When I would sit in meetings, I would just write trigger words down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I could regurgitate.
Yeah.
What time formation was, uniform, where, all that stuff. Just a trigger word, And towards the end of my career, I couldn't do that. I had to start taking long, and I found myself going to the local store, the store down the street, but now I'm in another town,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now I'm in another town because somebody called me on the phone. Hey, what are you doing? I'm going to Walmart. Oh, okay. And then they're talking and I'm bullshitting back. And before you know it, I'm in another town. And they're like, where the hell's Walmart at? I'm like, damn it. You know what I mean? Like we've been on the phone for 45 minutes or whatever. So yeah, it's you know, you the you know, the not remembering, I have a brain stutter. You know, it just, but it's the new norm. You know what I mean? It's what I, it's
I
what
have
I'm
that all
accustomed
the
to now.
time. Like, like before we got on here, I was here in my office at the Chop House, and my wife works down the street, manages the store down the street in downtown Lewisburg here. And I called her and I said, "You got any ibuprofen over there? My legs bother me from where I put the culvert in today." "Yeah, sure. Come down and get it." I went down and got it, drove back over here, came up in the office. It didn't remember to get the ibuprofen out of the vehicle. Like the whole reason I went over there was to get the ibuprofen. So I had to walk all the way back outside to go get. Like I just didn't even remember.
Yeah. And you know, and it's one of those things where it's a lot like the NFL guys with the CTE. They don't realize how bad it is until they're no longer, you know. And it's the same way, you know, when people don't understand how the energy from roadside bombs work. You know what I mean? They don't get the pressure, the overpressure. You know, they don't get that the energy that leaves that explosive on the side of a road when it comes and hits the side of your vehicle. It bounces back at twice the amount of energy it left with, and then it just keeps bouncing. You know, and your body, your brain, you know, it's taken all that. It's taken all that. So and Lord knows, I mean, you know, in 2005 alone, you know, my platoon, we were hit. It seemed like every 3 days. You know what I mean? So, you know, and so much so that First Sergeant Ward used to put people in our convoys so they can get a cab badge. You know what I mean? You know, like end of deployment. You know, we're sitting in the platoon sergeant meeting. He's like, "All right, you know, first platoon, how you got anybody that don't have a cab badge? Yeah, I got so and so and so and so. Yeah, okay. Vic's going to Warhorse tomorrow. Put him in. You know." And I'm like, "God damn, man." You know. You know, when the battalion S3 nicknames you the IED magnet, you know what I mean? Like
there you go. There you go.
Yeah, right. So, and it didn't get any better as deployments went on. The IEDs got more sophisticated.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, granted, our vehicles got more sophisticated as well, but you know, as the deployments went on, you know, it's just when you're out on the road as much as we were, you know, it's not a matter of if you'll get hit with an IED, it's a matter of when and how many times, you know. So, you know, and
that's what I try to tell people is like it, you know, like, did you get hit by road stuff? I'm like, what time? Like, they're like, what? Like, did you get a concussion? It's like, yeah, probably about 30, 40 times. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. And in 05, they didn't even check for concussions.
Oh,
do you know what I mean? There was no 72-hour stand down. There was, you know, I don't know how many times the QRF would bring me out another vehicle so I could continue mission. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Right. So yeah, there was no stand down. There was none of that. So, you know, but after the 05, deployment, I was diagnosed with a head injury, diagnosed with because we did those baselines before we left, and then we came back and did the baselines again, and they're like, "Oh wow!" Like,
Yeah.
like, yeah. So,
and the hearing too. The hearing baselines, mine is like all shut as shit.
yes.
Thank you, 3M.
Right.
Oh, I signed a non-disclosure agreement with that. I'll be quiet.
Well, and I'll tell you, it's funny. It's funny, you know, like my wife will see the commercial and she'll like, you know, and I'm like, mine stayed in my cat eyes every deployment. Like I never wore them shits, so I can't. You know what I mean? Like
you can't hear the radio anyway with the earplugs in.
I never use those shits, so I can't blame nobody but myself.
Yeah, maybe a terrorist or two too. Yeah.
I mean, well, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, let's move on to something more fun. That's it. All right. You're a big bad Steve Vickers. You're at a party, you're talking to people, whatever. Funniest story you ever had in the Army?
Funniest story. God damn. You know, we were up in Aberdeen. I was out at Fort Riley, and we got sent to Aberdeen to field test the buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
Right. This is in 90. This is in 99. So this is before, and you know, any of the OIF stuff or OEF stuff. And our job was to find a vehicle that can clear a minefield, right? You know, the fork, the spork, I guess, on the front of the buffalo. So we had two different squads, if you will, up at Aberdeen, and I was in charge of one squad. We had another E6 in charge of another, and so his squad was in charge of the buffalo. My squad was in charge of a vehicle called the Cash Spear. Right? You never heard of it, but it's a South African vehicle, right? And looks just like the buffalo, big monstrosity, bullet catcher, you know. And it had two arms on it. It had one in the front and one in the back. And there was a guy from the guy from South Africa. Had a nice long handlebar mustache, and he showed us a video of him driving this vehicle through a minefield in South Africa. And you know, they had a vehicle, they had the camera on the inside, and they had the cameras on the outside, and has this old World War II like bucket helmet on, and you know, his Fu Manchu, and I mean, he's riding and boom, and oh, it was some of the funniest shit I've ever seen, and that was his submission on why the Army should buy the Cash Spear and not, you know, this truck from International, and I think that's what did him in. But you know, I mean, holy shit! But the problem with the Cash Spear is the only hatches it had was in the top of it. It didn't have a door like the Buffalo did. And so that was, I mean, that was one major flaw, because if that thing went on, you know, when it on its top, then you can't get out. So that was a major flaw. And you know, to his answer to that is, don't let it roll on its top. And you're like, okay. That's it. So, but yeah, I mean, you know, I did in that I did some cool shit when on the Army wrestling team. I mean, we got to travel. That was pretty cool, and things of that nature. So I got to do some cool stuff.
Yeah. So how do we know it works when I'm here, right?
Yeah, I mean, here's the video. That's what it was. Yeah.
The hell of a sales pitch.
But yeah. That was a good. It was a good 45. Yeah, it was a good 45 days. We spent up there, and it was good times.
Oh, TDY is always fun.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my funny story for this version of Mutton Chop Monday.
Okay.
When I was with Barker's crew, we were running the convoy stuff. We went over to Warhorse, and you remember how we used to get every month or so the finance people come over, divvy out cash. People need cash.
Yeah.
So we go over there. It's in the summer. It's hotter than shit. We go over there. We swing by wherever the finance people were there in their little lean-to, and get these two soldiers, one male, one female. Get them in the truck, getting ready to roll out the gate in a goddamn combat zone. It's like, all right, put your magazine in your weapon. And both of them looked at me like, we don't have magazines. Swear to God, I was carrying so much shit on the front. I was like, here. They had no rounds at all.
Yeah. Well, there was that time. There was that time in Bakuba. I went to Warhorse, and they, as soon as I RP'd Warhorse, they said, "Hey, come to the talk." And I said, "All right." I go to the talk, and they linked me up with Anderson Cooper. Right? You remember when he came down?
Yeah. Yep.
And so they linked me up with Anderson Cooper, and him, and he had a van, and they're like, "We need to take this van down. We're going to do a remote from your from your police station." Yeah.
Yep.
And I said, "Okay." He's like, and so the guy was like, "I'll follow you." "You're going to follow me where?" He's like, "To the police station." "In that van?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, you don't want to follow me, buddy. And so I convinced them to put that thing on a Hemet. For some reason, but Brigade was going to let him drive that fucking van down, and I'm like, huh. So, anyways, we get down. We took him the back way, took him through the cemetery and down by the river, and came up under the bridge, and we get back to the JC. Yeah, we get back to the JCC, and I go upstairs in the hallway, and I get on the old green phone, and I dial that old 1-800 number we had to call back to Fort Benning. And call my wife, and I said, "Hey, I think your dream's over." That she's like, "What?" I'm like, "You're because Anderson Cooper was her guy, right? Love." I'm like, I don't think you have a shot with Anderson Cooper." And she's like, "Why is that?" And I'm like, he's gay." "Oh, no, he ain't." And this is 05. This is before he came. I'm like, "Oh, like I just spent an hour with him." I said, "Yeah," and yeah. So that was pretty. But I did get an autograph for my wife from him. He was kind enough to do that. But yeah, and he's like, "All right, what should I do?" I said, "Hey, if anything happens, you stay in this truck unless it's on fire."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I said, unless it's on fire, you stay right here in this truck. And he did. I mean, we didn't get hit or nothing that day, but he did what he was told. But that was pretty cool.
That was during the first ever elections, right? He came and pretty much the streets were closed down and everything else, right?
Yeah. And but the JCC, like I said, it was something different that I didn't, I didn't experience anything after that of living in the populace. People lived on cops, but cops were standalone. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We were at Iraqis in there all day, every day. So it was just which letting Iraqis in there all day, every day. That's what led to the chow hall, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's kind of. Yeah,
but the story. The story about the chow hall, and this is something I carry with me every day. Me and Lieutenant Diaz, we used to wait to the end of chow. We were two, above average size men, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And right, so we used to wait to the end of chow to go down and finish the mermites, because that's what we ate out of, right? We ate out of mermites, and so we would go down but that day, as we were walking through the gym, I stopped off in the latrine that was right there in the MWR, and I said, I'll meet you down there. And while I was in there, the boom went off, and it's one of those, that survivor's guilt, you know what I mean? Yeah. That you have. And I was also one of the first guys in the chow hall to see the aftermath. Immediately falling. Like the MPs that were in there, they were still disoriented. That carrying Sergeant Leitner out, and I tell you, when I took a path through the chow hall that day, and I stepped over Lieutenant Diaz, right, and the only thing I saw was a dark-skinned man laying on the ground. You know what I mean? Naked, right? And at the end of chow, we allowed Iraqis, the officers, we allowed them in. So I immediately just assumed, right? And because it didn't look like, it didn't look like him. So I just walked by him and I'm looking for him. I don't see him. And then I end up getting caught on the other end, where the mechanic bay was, because Sergeant Gordon was caught under the wall. Mm-hmm. So I got caught under there. When I came back, somebody was kneeling down next to LT and said, "This is Lieutenant Diaz." And I'm like, "What?" And again, being familiar with explosives like we are, for someone to have their clothes torn off their body, they're in a close proximity to that explosion, So, that was a bad day. I said early on that was the funnest deployment till that day, and that was a bad day.
Yeah, that was probably the longest day I've ever been a part of that day in my life. That was something else. I mean, people were talking that this generator blow up in the back. They thought maybe a mortar hit one of the generators in the back or something like that. And it was just, and I've probably never been more mad than I was like the next day after it happened. You know what I mean?
Right.
I want to get your take on this. And if it's too much, we cut it out. I hear all these politicians and shit talk about, well, we never should have went to Iraq. And it makes me pissed off as fuck that they want to try to gain some kind of political thing for that when there's a bunch of people that don't get to see people on holidays now because they sent us there in the fucking first place. And now they're saying, oh no, we should have never done it. And it just pisses me off when people are like, hey, we should have never done that. We should have never done that. And I'm like, shut the fuck up, because a lot of people went and did it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I don't get political because there's no right answer. But and I don't agree with any politician. I don't, regardless of what side they're on, I don't agree with them. But I know this. I know Iraq was different from 03 to 05. I know Iraq was different from 05 to 07. I know Iraq was different from 07 to 09. It was different. And I had outs not to go back to Iraq. I was DA select for recruiter that I filed bankruptcy, so I didn't have to be a recruiter. I was DA select for drill sergeant, and went and petitioned the division sergeant major to put me on a plane to Iraq. He did. You know what I mean? And he's like, hey, me and the boss will take care of it. Oh, now I never got promoted again. You know what I mean? I never got promoted again after that. But at the time, I felt in my heart I needed to go to Iraq with my guys. And, I would rather live with retiring in an E7 than reading in the Army Times that an engineer platoon got obliterated, got obliterated. And maybe that's a superiority complex I have. I don't know. You know what I mean? That I can whatever. But, I never lost a guy to enemy contact in all my deployments. I lost a guy to suicide, and he shot himself with a saw. You know what I mean? Yeah. He shot himself with a saw. And I lost a guy to, I got one guy severely injured from sniper fire. That's it. And hell, I wasn't even the platoon sergeant that day. I was doing a right seat ride with the new platoon sergeant that day because I was taking over as the operations sergeant for Sergeant Sheffield. So, but let me tell you that suicide, I carry it every day. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah,
I carry it every day. And the sniper shot, I carried it. Callahan, Callahan. He's the guy that got shot, and he calls me all the time. And we talk all the time, and he lets me off the hook all the time. You know what I mean? And here's a funny for you. So he was in the turret of a Bradley, and we had to break. Well, we didn't have to, but we were ordered to break the final drives on this Bradley so we can tow it back to the FOB. Right now, first of all, we're doing route clearance in a Bradley, right?
Yeah,
that don't make sense. Second of all, we're going 5 miles an hour to do route clearance. All right, that makes sense. So towing a Bradley at 5 miles an hour, you ain't gonna hurt it, right? So we had to stop, break final drives. So you know how long that takes, breaking final drives.
Yeah, it takes a long time.
Especially in Iraq, out on the street. It's 130 degrees out, and we've been patrolling for an hour, 2 hours already. So that engine's super hot.
Yeah.
And so they're like, go ahead and break final drives, right? So we were there, I don't know, 45 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it was. And Callahan stuck his head out the hatch. A couple seconds, shot rang out. You know what I mean? And when he dropped down into the turret, he had the presence of mind to turn that turret so we can get in the back. That was and he got shot through the bicep and came out his tricep. And so I put him in my Humvee, and me and him, we take off to the goddamn aid station. And I'm like, I'm on the radio, goddamn, calling in 9line and all this stuff. And after I put the mic down, he's like, "Goddamn, Sergeant Vic, you act like you care." I'm like,
that sounds like
what are you talking about?
Sounds exactly
I'm like, of course I care, but it's one of those things where, again, it's hard. It's easy to be tough, and I was loud, I was boisterous, I cussed a lot, I was animated. People thought I was about to have a heart attack all the goddamn time, but it's because I cared. It's because I didn't want to stand in one of those them honor flights taking guys out. I didn't want to do it, and not for my guys. So, but yeah, those things, those are the things that I carry with me, and yeah.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I'm doing this. Guys, talk about it so people can understand what veterans are carrying around with them. Maybe why they're a little bit of an asshole sometimes. You know what I mean?
Right.
Why they're a little rough. Why they don't like it when you're checking out at Walmart. You don't have your method of payment ready while they're scanning your shit. Shit like that. Right. And so that's what I'm trying to. I don't know what I'm trying to accomplish, but it's good for me, and hopefully it's good for people to come on. And that's all I get shit about.
And that's the same thing. That's the same thing with our podcast. We don't do it for money. We don't do it. We're not trying to be Joe Rogan and shit. But it's therapeutic. Like I said earlier, it's outside the VA care. You know what I mean? It's organic. You know what I mean? You're not sitting in a room measuring dicks. You know what I mean? Because I tried that. Right? I tried that, and you sit there and you're like, "Hi, I'm Steve Vickers. I have post-traumatic stress. Da 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 da. I went to Iraq 4 times. I got blown up. X number of times, and this guy's over here is like, I got shot in the face 13 times. And this girl, oh no, both that, and I'm like, no, this is a dick measuring contest. This ain't getting me anywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's organic. It's raw. We don't do a lot of prepping. You know what I mean? We don't. We do. Let me retract that. We do a lot of research. You know what I mean? So that we're, if we're spewing numbers out, the numbers make sense. But yeah, we're not doing a whole lot of scripting. We're not, it's off the cuff. It's, like conversations are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like conversations, and yeah, there's some cussing because we're veterans. Yeah, there's some dark humor. Right. Yeah, there's some dark humor because we're veterans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one of the mechanisms that we use to get through our day. So.
God, the wife, she's like, how can you find that funny? I was like, well, because I've seen a lot of other shit that's way worse than that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, some of the darkest shit is the funniest shit to me. You know what I mean? Like I'm knee slapping, can't, hyperventilating because I'm laughing so hard. And, And you can put yourself, right, like the worst shit out there. You're like, nah, yeah, I get, I see, I get it. I fucking get it.
Yeah, and the whole thing of this, I mean, I'm gonna do some funny shit, and eventually I'm gonna get into some tinfoil hat shit because that's kind of what I like. But this part, these Chop Mondays that I'm doing, it's more like let's just talk to veterans, and I want to try to get some people's spouses. I'm going to try to get this, so people understand why. First of all, we don't give a shit about either side of the politics. Second, why we find dark shit so funny, why we're such assholes sometimes, why we're such, but at the same time, you understand why actually most of the veterans I know anyway, they'll do anything for you if they give a shit about you. You know what I mean? Like you and I haven't seen each other in years and years and years, but until today. But if you called me and you said, "Show, I need help," I'd probably be in the truck.
Yeah,
on the way. You know what I mean? And I would like people to. Maybe that's what the world needs a little bit of more right now. Is like it's that instead of who the fuck?
I would much rather, I would much rather come on your show and chop it up for hour and a half, whatever it is, than to read about something in an obituary somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Exactly.
You know what I mean? I much rather. And there was so, too often, we're losing the war at home as veterans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We all raised our hand to go do the bidding of this country. Good, right, wrong, or indifferent, right? And that's the politics side. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Just our country sent us forward to close with and destroy the enemy, and we did that to the best of our ability. Period. You know what I mean? And what a senator from wherever thinks of that, so be it. You know what I mean? But as long as there's people in this country willing to do that, this country will be all right.
Yeah, I believe so too.
This country will be all right because it's that same mindset that will prevent this country destroying itself from the inside. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And and I don't know. I don't know why people want to be divided all the fucking time anyway. I mean, like I don't give a shit who you vote for. You don't give a shit who I vote for, but they want you to fight about it. But we can go get some beer or something, and we don't even have to fucking talk about it because it don't fucking make it. Damn, they're both crooked as fuck anyway. You know, you know what I mean?
Like every time somebody brings up politics with me, like they want to debate that I'm a middle-aged white man that's with a beard, so I'm already a Republican. I'm mega this and mega okay, whatever. And I'm like, okay, can we start with the premise that every politician lies? Can we start there? If you can't start there with me, then we have nothing to talk about. You know what I mean? I don't care what politician it is, they lie. They stretch the truth to benefit themselves, right? So, if we can start there, then we can have a conversation. But if you're not willing, if you're going to throw out facts that are skewed to prove your point, but you're not going to throw out the other facts. I had an ex-wife that did that shit. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah,
nah, nah, no thanks.
Yeah,
no thanks.
You know what kills me is that anybody that would be any good at it don't want the fucking job because they know people are going to smash the fuck out of them, so they don't want the fucking job.
Right,
and I don't fucking blame them.
And I've said that for years. I don't know why anyone would want to be the president of the United States. And then somebody's response to that is, "Oh, you're the most powerful man in the world." Are you? Are you? Like, come on. It just in the last 8 years, we know that that's not true. You know what I mean? Because the president now, right? We have one former president on trial, right?
Yeah.
So his position didn't mean shit, and and then we have it just don't make sense to me. Don't make fucking sense why anybody would want to be the fucking president.
I tell my wife, I was like, I like just talking shit about both and then stepping back and watch people do. It's fine.
Right, like if either one of them, if either one of them could impose a coherent goddamn sentence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm more able to believe what you're saying if, one, you don't repeat yourself over and over and over, and two, you're not mumbling.
Or
maybe
or maybe an F-bomb thrown in there. Yeah. And man, I'll tell you what, we're gonna get ready to wind down because if I don't get home, my wife will put me out like a cigarette.
All right.
Nah, man. Anyway, remind people where they can find you again on your podcast.
Yeah, that's Whiskey, Wheels, and Wounds. It's on Facebook. You can catch us on Spotify or anywhere that you get your podcasts. And then the episodes coming out next week will be on Spotify or on YouTube.
Okay. Links below, folks. Links below. All right. I'm going to all 10 people, 15, 20, 50, however many watch this, so they'll get the link.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, a man who's 23andMe came back as Viking. Steve.
That's right.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you, brother.
Yep. And there you have it, folks. Pretty big guy with a pretty big heart. Steve Vickers, I want to thank him for coming on. Again, I know we've said it a few times, but make sure to check out his podcast, Whiskey, Wheels, and Wounds, wherever you get your podcasts, also on YouTube this coming week. I want to thank everybody for making it this far. I know I could be a boring kind of guy, and I'm trying to keep my fucking mouth clean because the Gestapo may take us down. All that being said, I appreciate you joining us. Stay up, keep your powder dry, and we'll see you next time.